Welcome to our third Andor Season 2 recap special. We're going to be talking about episodes 7, 8, and 9, all three of those. And if you haven't watched, this is not going to be the show for you. But if you have, you'll be glad to see not only myself, but our friend Ryan. This is Ryan Campbell who's back. And
That's
we
right.
appreciate you being here. Thank you, sir. Sorry, I had
Do you
myself.
hear the Gorman sing?
It's funny you say that because that is one of the points I wanted to make. And for the first time on this show, but people who see me on really on any other show, they all know the great Brooklyn boy himself, David Brody. Thank you for being here, sir.
Brooklyn boy, yes, but Gorman in my heart.
Yeah, we all have a little Gorman in our heart. Brody, since this is your first appearance on our Andor show, I'd like to get just a very quick feel for where you were at heading into episode 7, 8, and 9 after the first 6. Where were your thoughts at? How are you feeling about this season?
Heavily enjoyed the first 6, but then started to dread the last 3, knowing how Rogue One ends. So every time you're like upbeat about Cassian, excited for him. He's a messenger. He's winning. He's so cool. This is such a great show.
He got to be a fashion designer.
That's right.
Yeah. He got to correct people on the pronunciation of many names. And you're like, oh, this is great. I could watch this guy for 5 more seasons. That's not going to happen. So
it's not.
I cherished the last 3 knowing that they were going to end. So I watched them the same way I watched Revenge of the Sith, although this was better. But you knew what was coming, so you knew characters were going to disappear or die. So it was just a matter of how they were going to get rid of people. But I very much enjoyed going into 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, no, I think there's really something to be said for the job that this show has done. And I think you can say what you want about sort of the pacing. We talked a little bit about this with Daredevil. There's slow, and then there's very deliberate and using things as building blocks. And if there's ever a show to really pay attention to everything that's happening on the screen, this would be one of those shows. This isn't one of those, I'm going to put on Star Wars where I check my email. It's definitely not that kind of show. And as we head into this episode, I think a lot of us are left feeling like Cyril in the screenshot that I have here. This is sort of the moment where it's like, wow, I can't believe all this shit is happening. And,
are we the baddies? This is
and that's a great place to start. Ryan, are we the bad guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole story of Cyril is just like a tragic tale of. He's always been kind of depicted as almost kind of like that incel type, mama's boy, that's obsessed with kind of logic and reason. And I think he never really thought the Empire was like great in what they were doing, but was like the best option. He at least understood that the whole reason and order was like at their core. So he kind of was okay with everything that was going on. And this moment right here is kind of the realization is, oh, I might have jumped in too deep. Maybe it's not what I thought. And by then it's too late. He's been completely radicalized.
Yeah. And, we talked about this in our last special with Joshua, and it's kind of been this narrative is Cyril going to turn? Is he going to realize the potential error of his ways and decide to help the rebellion? And we'll never know, will we? Because as the scroll going across the screen is pointing out now that we're talking about all the spoilers from all 9 of these episodes. And the way that we do this show, we usually attack each storyline as it develops over the 3 episodes because this release schedule is not conducive to. Now we're talking about episode 7. And now we're going to talk about episode 8. And believe me, I've done shows like that when I used to host shows for a network called AfterBuzz TV. Netflix Marvel shows would all be released at once, and we'd have to talk about one at a time. And then you kind of start to forget, like, did that happen episode 6 or episode? Anyway, so we are talking about all of this, and the Cyril arc does not progress the way that I thought it was as recently as last week. And even as far into episode 8 as like the 20, 30 minutes in, I did not really see where this was going. Brody, your thoughts on Cyril all the way along as we've gotten this character, and as we obviously get to see him in this episode, or these 3 episodes.
Well, I think incel is a fair term for him, but he was somebody who was oppressed by his mother. He's an only child.
Sure.
Her little boy, her baby. He was anal in the way he dressed, in the way he fixed every little thread on his uniform. And I think the empire, or the first order, was the kind of order that he would like, very structured. And I think being under the thumb of a woman like that, you need to feel power. And I think being a police officer type was him trying to, take care of, things, keep things under authority and be in charge. And the empire was just another means to that. Like, I'm going to move up the ranks. I'm going to be rewarded. I'm going to be treated like, with respect, unlike my mother. And then, Dedra was someone that kept him in line, but also was smart enough to know to make him feel like he was in charge, even though he wasn't. And, which was a good foil for him. The only thing that shocked me, if we're going into his character, we'll talk about more about this later if you want, is the choking scene, which I thought was maybe a little out of character for him. He's someone who craves power, but that didn't sit well with me. And it diminished her character tremendously. So, thought, yeah,
go ahead. Finish it up.
Yeah, no, I thought he was taking a slight turn. I thought he would eventually try to help the Gormans. He did go to the one woman and try to, make amends, and she slapped him in the face like, "It's too late. You're an idiot. We know what you're up to." Everybody played him. He thought he was this guy running the office, and someone bugged his office. He was in charge of nothing, even though he thought he was in charge of everything. So the fact that he couldn't pull the trigger at the end was the perfect metaphor for his inability to actually, ascend for real. He was the guy with the gun, but he wasn't the guy who could shoot the gun. He failed at everything.
Yeah, and I just want to bring in our friend Ivan Soto, asking if I noticed Cyril's hair was much looser in these episodes. I did notice that. He'd become more and more Gorman, and that was on purpose by the actor and Tony Gilroy. Yeah, he definitely has a different look. It's been a year since the last crop of episodes. And I would say, Brody, that I agree that in the moment it felt very out of character for him to choke Deirdre. It was still very surprising and unsettling, I guess, being the best way to put it. But then when he sees Cassian and the way that he just flies off the handle, it's like, okay, he was really on edge at that moment. And her not stopping it is a little bit more of a referral to topics that we covered in our previous episode, that the sorts of things she might be into when the lights are off. And remember, she insists that the lights get turned off. She does not want to see anything.
Listen, she may be into asphyxia. I can't read into her, the character too much. Sure. What I'm saying, as a third tier Nazi, she should have been a little more like, get your hands off me. Who do you think who do you think you're touching? Like, I'm part of the empire. I'm wearing the white jacket. Never mind the fact that we sleep together. The fact that not only did she allow it to happen, but she gave up the information so quickly was surprising for someone who had been, resting bitch face, that mean, in power. I don't care who dies. I'm going to work for the emperor. I'm climbing the ranks. And then she's like, oh, okay, it was the Dukes. It was the Dukes, like in Trading Places. She just gave it up. So,
well,
I thought that was surprising.
Let me ask you, Ryan, because it seems like the whole thing, as hard as it is for Cyril to take, it actually being in motion, it's actually fairly difficult for Deirdre to take. And obviously, I'm not saying this lightly when we're talking about any act of physical violence. Specifically, this is an act of physical violence from a man to a woman that he's in a relationship with. On some level, did she feel like he deserves to react this way, even if she doesn't think the things like, I deserve to be treated this way? When she's trying to struggle to just loosen the collar in her uniform, I think she's sort of like doing it to herself, metaphorically. I think she's like, oh, this is so much worse than I thought it was. What are your thoughts, Ryan, as sort of this plays out for Deirdre?
Yeah, I think they both kind of represent cogs in the machine that just never expected it to go this far in a way. And even though they've been in the Empire, a lot of it's always been behind the desk or numbers or, formulas. Even Deidre has always kind of been in the facility kind of planning things out. I think that the turning point for her was when she had that headset on, and we don't know who was on the other end, but it must have been just the command to go ahead with it, because then she puts it down and tells the fixer guy to go ahead with it. I think from that point on, she seems to be in a position of just overwhelmed by everything, probably feeling a little bit of guilt, maybe not necessarily believing that they're in the wrong, but clearly like doesn't like her position and everything that's going on. So yeah, I think again, hesitant to say that when she's being choked out by Cyril, she's thinking I deserve this, and more just like, at this point, just completely numb to everything that's going on around her and just kind of letting it all play out to a way, and harboring that guilt enough to where it's not enough for her to really just push back and latch out, because maybe internally she does kind of feel like she's had this coming for the role she's playing in all this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an extension. I feel like she hates herself because of, this was essentially her idea, and, you're trying to do the right thing because, look, I believe she's a true believer. She believes in the cause of the Empire. And this idea that we're going to do this is like, oh, this is great. And it's more like, yeah, but we're going to get out of here. This is what we've been waiting for, because she wants it to be over. And I think that it's very complex, sort of the reaction she has. And, Cyril spends so much time just wandering around and looking at all of it before he sees Cassian. I liked the moment where they walk by each other, they're not that close and they don't actually see each other. And the fact that episode 8, is called Who Are You? Is I think that's got to be the worst thing for Cyril at all. He's like, this guy literally ruined my life, Cyril thinking this. And he doesn't even know who I am.
It's like all of his fears as someone who's wanted to climb up the corporate ladder in the Empire realized in that one moment, the guy who's kind of lasered his focus for the past 4 years and doesn't even remember him.
Yeah.
He just wanted to be seen. He just wanted to be seen. And a guy who actually saw him and put a gun to his head in season 1 didn't even remember him. Yeah. He's like, I don't know who you are. Sorry. You're nobody.
It's just a Tuesday for Cassian.
Yeah.
Cassian is the David Spade character from SNL. I'm sorry. And you are?
And I would know you from.
Yeah. That doesn't.
Not ringing any bells.
Cyril, it doesn't really ring any bells. You gave me an excuse.
There you go.
But yeah. And I mean, what an amazing sequence that is. And Brody, like you're talking about, he can't pull the trigger. Now, he may have gotten to a place where he's like, I need to do this, and he would have pulled the trigger, but he took too long. So it's the same thing as not being able to do it. And I think it's fairly fitting in the chaos of Gorman that's all surrounding everything. It's just pretty quick, like right, and then that's it. It's a very quick and easy laser blast to the skull. So yeah, I think that the evolution of Cyril specifically, but Cyril and Deirdre's storyline for these 3 episodes, I felt like I knew where we were at heading into these, and it went such a different way that we did than I was expecting. In any case,
I was convinced that Cyril was just going to be stationed on the Death Star at the end of the season. Like he was just going to get like reassigned to the Death Star, and that was going to be the end of it.
That would have been fantastic.
Yeah, it would have been one of those like we never see him again. Yeah, and we'll
It
just
just
be like,
pans
oh,
out from his window and we see,
yeah,
oh, okay, he's on the Death
yeah.
Star.
He's got like a cubicle and like a bullpen in the Death Star where he's also going to be crunching numbers, but he's doing it on the Death Star. Yeah, so I think
Did
that.
you
Go ahead.
no? Just did you notice after he chokes Dedra and he leaves the building, she waits like 10 minutes to say, "Lock it down, get him, don't let him leave."
Yeah,
Like, I mean, was she saying that because she had to think about it for a while, and she couldn't react? She didn't know. Like, was she just lost in thought or in shock because she didn't go after him? She didn't like immediately shut the building down. He was already like halfway across the the center area when she's like, lock the building down, and like, he's gone at that point. So
yeah.
was she in shock or was she just incompetent? I couldn't figure out why she waited that long.
My feeling was that it was such shock, sort of the whole thing, that's why. I don't think that incompetence is part of it. That's not something that I feel like you can accuse her of. What do you think, Ryan? Why do you think? It's a great point, Brody. I do remember thinking that when I was watching it, that it's like, it took a little
Clear,
while.
yeah, he's clear across the courtyard by now. If I had to guess, I think it's probably a balance of that guilt that she betrayed him, not necessarily as guilt of what she's done to the Gormans, but what she did to him, and realizing, yeah, he deserves a chance, but then also realizing, oh wait, I told him the entire plan that we knew from the beginning. It's probably not safe for him to be out there, both for us and for him. Let's lock it down. But by then it was too late. So I think it's probably just like an internal combination of shock, combination of an internal struggle, both her military thoughts and then her personal thoughts about their relationship. So I think this is kind of a combination of things caused a little bit of a freeze there from her.
Yeah. A couple of times in this episode, we're going to refer to the animated series Rebels, specifically as it relates to Mon Mothma. But my understanding is that that's the aspect of Star Wars properties of the IP that has dealt with Gorman before. So heading into this season for you, Ryan, because you're familiar with that show and I didn't see it all the way through to the end. What were your thinking in terms of, oh, wow, we're going to be dealing with Gorman, and that obviously factors in heavily. And our buddy Ivan Soto is very excited that we're now talking about Rebels, that we got 3 exclamation points. Talk a little bit about what you knew about why this incident was so important to really the birth of the rebellion, and if it played out any differently, not speaking about the Mon Mothma part of it, but the actual incident on Gorman itself.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for most that kind of going into the season, knowing Gorman was going to be a core part of it was the Tarkin part of it that was kind of set in the lore of where Tarkin was looking to land his Star Destroyer and there were protesters there and he just landed it anyway and killed 500 people. The assumption was that they were going to retool that and kind of make that the Gorman massacre for Andor and just maybe rearrange it a different way. When it turns out that did happen in this timeline, and that's what the monument there is for. I don't know if they say that he parked it on top of them or just fired on them or whatever it was, but like both those events happened, so we almost get 2 massacres. So once it was established that, oh wait, that did happen in this timeline, where are we going next? And the assumption would be that they are just going to, wholesale everything to start clearing out for the mining. But so that did kind of throw a wrench in with kind of what everyone was expecting. And then going into this, so going into the rest of the season, kind of knowing where we were heading with with the building tension of the rebellion. But yeah, even from what we had seen in Rebels, there wasn't a ton to go off of about where they were going to go from here.
Well, anybody who's watching or listening, Ivan Soto has the helpful footnote that apparently if you watch season 3, episode 18 of Rebels, it's a good continuation to Andor. And
that's the Mon Mothma one that we will talk about.
Yeah,
we will definitely talk about that. Yes. So yeah. And Brody, I'm assuming that like me, you haven't seen much or any of the animated shows, correct?
No, I did see enough scenes though of the episode he's talking about, episode 18, because everyone, everywhere I read, every video I watched was like, oh, it continues in it leads up to episode 18, and also I thought Dedra was going to die because she's not in Rogue One, but she doesn't because she's in Rebels. So I'm interested now to go watch Rebels, at least season 3, because clearly there's a carryover from Andor to lead into Rogue One. So I don't know how they explain. Do they explain, Ryan, why Dedra's not in Rogue One? Does she die in Rebels? Spoiler, I don't care.
Man, it's been a while since I've watched Rebels. I don't even know if I was aware that Daedra was in Rebels, but I don't recall that she dies enough to where she wouldn't have been in Rogue One.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like she's gonna die on this show. Okay, so Ivan Soto says that she's not in Rebels.
Yeah, it was. She could have been, and it's been a while since I've watched Rebels. But when you said that, I was like,
it could be as simple. It could be as simple as they modeled her character after someone who was in Rebel. You know, the visual.
The internet says differently,
but I can't see that. So if you want to message it to me, or I guess hold your phone up right to the camera. But I feel like your camera is not as close as mine. So she appears in Star Wars Rebels. All right, so we'll look for that. Okay, as we continue to talk about the way it relates to what happens here. So it'll be interesting to see. And yes, Ivan got giddy when Gold Squadron was mentioned. But so I know we'll talk about that sort of in a moment. And it's interesting because each of these batches of 3 episodes is a little bit of a reset. It's like, okay, another year later, and Deirdre has now is stationed on Gorman, and she's there, and they're able to see each other, I think, similarly for like an hour at a time or whatever. I don't think Cyril needs an hour. I'm not going to lie, but anyway, that's just me making generalizations. I shouldn't speak so unkindly of the dead.
And how much of that time is with the lights off?
All of it.
But we know he has a problem firing his gun, so
All right, you earned that. All right, thank you. Well said.
Thank you.
But and I think that again the expectations were not what I thought, and I can't remember if I said this before we started or if it was once we were on the air that I mentioned that our friend Katie wanted to be part of the conversation, but she had only watched 1 episode. She's like, "Oh, I'll just be on the first third." I'm like, "It's really hard to talk about episode 7 because I had to look back on a scroll through a recap online because I'm like, oh man, I don't even remember what happened in episode 7, just because so much happens in 8 and 9. And that was really, I was, I don't know how you watched it, Brody, but I was telling Ryan that I watched it Tuesday night. I was like, all right, I'll watch the first one and then I'll watch the other ones over the next couple of days. And then after the first one, I was like, well, I guess I got to watch the next one. And then episode 8 ends and I'm like, well, I'm not going to bed till after 1 o'clock, am I? Because I need to finish these right now. Did you watch them all in one fell swoop, Brody?
I did. I made the mistake of 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, not binging them.
Yeah.
Like I watched 1 and I'm like, oh, I'll watch 2 tomorrow night. And I got busy. I watched 2 days later. And there's a flow to it that you need. So watching all 3 of them in a row was much better for me. It also takes away my ability to tell you what happened in episode 7 versus 8 and 9. Like you said, if I had watched 7 and thought about it for a day, I'd remember more of it. But yeah, watching all of it, it seemed like a long movie, in which case what happened at the beginning of the movie, I don't know. If you ask me, if you ask me a question about it, I'd be like, oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
the barricades and whatever, something.
Don't ask me about the first 10 minutes of Megalopolis because really the disaster is what comes later. The sort of what we were dealing with in terms of the earliest episode is basically the idea that, oh, okay, they're on Yavin now. We're getting a little bit of that, so we're dealing with that. That was like, oh, this is the reset. It's like, we're moving around to a new location each of these episodes. And, Andor Cassian has an injury that he doesn't want. And this force healer that he goes to talk to, I was just like, now that when I was reading this recap, I'm like, oh yeah, that did happen. It better come back in some way and be useful because if it didn't, then why did you put me through that? Did I miss something, Ryan, with the force healer that we met? And is that a character that I should know from some other corner of the Star Wars universe?
I mean, it possibly could be. of all the people I know, I'm probably the deepest Star Wars nerd, and there's still stuff that I miss because who knows? There's probably somebody out there watching this that knows exactly who that is, but I don't read all the books and everything. But for me, I think it just harkened back to Rogue One and what they were doing with like those that aren't necessarily Jedi, but the Force kind of, maybe they're Force sensitive, or maybe if they would have been recruited when they were younger or whatever it may be, that we see with like Chirrut and them. Using the Force for different ways. So I kind of read it as more exploration of how people throughout the galaxy interact with the Force in almost a more spiritual way than necessarily just being Jedi or Sith. And then also kind of foreshadowing for what Andor's kind of role is as a messenger and how that leads to where he ends up in Rogue One, delivering maybe one of the most important messages that there is. So
yeah, it's right up there with the British are coming. It is a fairly important message. I agree. As we sort of jog our memories, Brody, what did you think sort of about, at least in the early part of this drop of episodes that Bix is seemingly better at dealing with everything, but now Cassian is the one who's trying to ignore his problems.
You mentioned the British are coming. Can I make a one if by land speeder joke or no?
I believe you just did.
Thank you very much. Bix made the ultimate sacrifice for the cause at the end, where she just left.
Yeah.
She left so that, Cassian would continue his mission. I don't want to be the reason why you derail your mission. And I think that he got promoted to captain in episode 9. So it was sort of like he was stepping up and taking the mantle of responsibility. And, as much as he was fighting it, he's not walking away as much as he says he's going to keep walking away.
He's like Danny Glover. It's like, how long have you been 2 weeks away from retirement? How long have you been getting too old for this shit?
Exactly. I want to make my own decisions. I have to think of me first. And, as oh God, what's his name? The older gentleman, the guy, the Luthen. Luthen tells him, he's like, you were here for me on all these other places. Every time I needed you on this planet, on that planet, on that planet, you're always there for me, and you signed up for this. He basically tells him, we both agreed this, you're probably going to die doing this. And as much as he doesn't want to admit it, I think deep down he knows that that's the case, that he's got to see this through. Even with the Bix thing, he got, he was sad Bix left, but he's like, okay, fix the robot. I got to move on. I got to complete the mission.
Ivan says, Bix leaving broke my heart, but at least we know why she's not in Rogue One. Ryan, I just figured she was going to get a stray laser blast.
We'll see. Yeah.
Did. It's still possible. I still think she's going to.
Still could happen. Yeah. She could get back in the fold.
Yeah.
I think we also saw that though, even in episodes 4, 5, and 6, where that Cassian is kind of, his blinder kind of is Bix. He gets focused on protecting her at the expense of, the greater mission. And we see that when they're in their little apartment on Coruscant, he's trying to carve out a little bit of a life. When he goes to Luthen's place to kind of confront him about going to meet Bix without him being there. And Luthen's like, do you realize you're breaking every protocol to come here? Yeah. He's like, how committed are you to this? So we see the seeds getting planted that she's a little bit of his blind spot. I think she realizes it, which I think is what influences her decision there at the end.
Right. And I think that, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, just going to say that a good example of what you just described, Ryan, is Will. Will was so obsessed with the women in his life that he made a stupid decision on the farming planet for the girl. And then he did the same thing with, whatever her name is, Dedra, not Dedra.
No, but I know
with a D, right? He went back to help her at the risk of the cause.
Well, I think that is the problem, Brody. I believe he's thinking with a D.
Yes. Give yourself a bell.
Damn it. All right.
There we go.
I should be embarrassed. By the way, in the chat, principled uncertainty. Christian has a cast iron dedication to things no one of sound mind cares about, which is more than most. I appreciate the feedback, principled uncertainty. It's great to see you in here. We'll miss you this weekend in Vegas for Hackamania, but I look forward to seeing you in the chat soon. And Drina is her name.
Drina,
It's
thank
weird.
You. Yep.
It's weird how sometimes the names are really cool, and sometimes they're really interesting, and sometimes they're just Drina.
Good old Star Wars
Or,
names.
or Luke.
Yeah, I mean, Luke, come on. So, yeah, I think that I was surprised that Bix would have this selflessness and the self-awareness, really, to be like, no, I'm the problem here. And she believes in the cause more than he does. And I'm not even saying he doesn't believe in the cause, but to the extent that he's like, yeah, but I mean, I care about the cause, but I feel like if I put this cause before my private life, I might end up dead after delivering a really important message about an Imperial battle station.
He's looking for the off ramp. We'll just say that he's committed, but he's looking for the off ramp.
Yeah, and I thought that the message she left. I thought as Ivan said, he characterized it as heartbreaking. It's very heartfelt. It's very sweet. And I'm sorry, Principal Uncertainty's back. I love you, if only as it brings me slightly closer to Dennis Miller. All right, I will screenshot this and text it to him. All right, Principal Uncertainty.
Did they have video messages and tablets in the first trilogy?
Well, that's kind of one of the things that we talked about last week was that last week was the first time we saw like essentially a television. We hadn't really seen that before. Except in the Christmas special. But in general, the fact that Bix was watching like a TV show, and then I think that sort of sets up the way that the media is carrying it. Usually it was like holographic projections.
Yeah. They watched the gossip show like earlier in this season. They were watching
Closest thing I can think of is like in episode 2 when Anakin and Obi-Wan go into that bar. I remember as a kid, like being fascinated by like the sports that were on in the background.
That's right.
But that's about the closest thing I could think of.
I just saw that a couple weeks ago, and you're right. I do remember noticing that. Yeah, it's
inconsistent with 4, 5, and 6.
Well, yeah,
this takes place BBY. It's 2 BBY. They didn't forget. Leia has a hologram message for Obi-Wan Kenobi. She didn't leave like a FaceTime.
Yeah. If I'm fan wishing it away or headcanon it away, I guess I would say they were sneaking that message out in the R2. So maybe a hologram was the most like dead drop version of it that they could do.
And instead of her
broadcasting something,
of her sending it out on Vine or possibly Instagram, sending out a reel. Yeah. And look, it is one of those things that you have to deal with, the simple fact that like, wait a minute, you're trying to tell me that in Star Trek Discovery, which is 10 full years before the pilot of the original Star Trek, there's all this way better technology. Okay, that might be a bit of a problem. So yes, there's sometimes you just have to think like, okay, that doesn't really add up. But fortunately, the stories are so good that you don't have to worry.
I do have one. I got one.
Okay. Good.
And The Empire Strikes Back, when the Imperials are video messaging to Vader about the status of the onslaught on the Rebel base on Hoth.
Yeah.
And he kills, and he does force choke somebody via video chat.
Right. And it's important to note that that's in the original release of Empire. It's also in the special editions, but the point is it's not something that's added in like 1997. Yeah. Well, let's not get too bogged down in that, but it is definitely something. It's something I noticed, and we did talk about it last week as well, because it's a little jarring. Like on season 1 of Andor, they all basically had the radio. They were, maybe it was live streaming, but just streaming audio. They had a real player. Is what they had.
And now they've got Bluetooth earpieces. So
right, exactly. And just wait until episode 11 when Cassian's playing a Nintendo Switch. It's going to be very confusing, and we'll all have to process it. But I thought that Cassian, going to Gorman and actually checking it out, and so that they've got him there for the actual massacre was, I think, important for the way that this event unfolded, but I don't think at any moment did he ever feel like, no, my assessment that these people aren't ready to uprise against the Empire. They didn't do anything to dispel that notion, did they, Ryan?
No, and it's very clear, like he's there for Daedra, like for the most part. So like while everything's going on around him, he's just like spotting where she's at, trying to get a beat on her. Like he doesn't seem concerned much at all with the massacre that's happening in the square. So I think he's kind of made his peace with what was going to happen here. He even mentioned it to Luthen that it's what happens when it burns, and he says it'll burn bright. So he's on a mission, and he's dedicated to that mission no matter what, up until pretty much when he runs into Cyril.
Yeah, and Brody, he's this close. He finally gets a beat on her, and he's ready to pull the trigger. But then Cyril's like, no, nobody pulls a trigger in front of my girlfriend if I can't do it. What did you think? Sort of like that was fairly tense, because I'm like, the way the show exists is like, well, he could definitely shoot her, and I would like I think that the result of that would very much have started the kind of riot that's about to happen here. But it's not even anything as substantial as that, is it, Brody?
Well, at that point, the riot had already started, but Cyril doesn't know he stopped Cassian from shooting her.
No.
He just saw his face. He's like, that guy. I mean, the universe isn't very large, so the odds are he'd run into him eventually, right?
Yeah.
I would have liked if he shot Daedra and then Cyril turned around to see what he was shooting at, saw that he killed Daedra, and then they fight, because then Cassian would have understood why he was fighting him. But on the other hand, I do love the "Who are you?" which wouldn't have happened, because he would have been like, "Oh, you're mad at me for shooting the white girl, the blonde chick."
Even if he doesn't know that it's his girlfriend, it's like, oh, okay, I shot a high-ranking Imperial officer. All right, so Ivan says that Cyril did know that Cassian almost killed Daedra, confirmed by the actor. But he's driven by the blind rage of, this guy ruined my life. Like he's part of that incident in season 1.
I think the actor's full of crap, because again, what the actor says is irrelevant. We watched it. Cyril did not know she was on the balcony. He never looked up. He was in the crowd, like stunned. And then he saw Cassian. He didn't come after him and say, there was no indication that he knew he was stopping Daedra from being shot.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where like the actors can read the script, so they have more information than what the actual character does in that scene.
Yeah,
so
the actor may have known, but Cyril didn't know. So let's, no.
I think, and I like it better for Cyril's character. I like that blind rage is based on his own inadequacies and how he's been felt than some sort of need to protect the woman he just choked out.
Yeah, I don't want to even think that he still loved her enough to like risk his life. I think he was done with her. I don't think he looked up mournfully like, oh, that's her office. I hope she comes to the window. No, he was stunned. And by the way, how does he survive the crowd when he's wearing "I work for the Empire" jacket? Like, wouldn't somebody have like taken a bat to his head? Get that guy.
Well, I think that he doesn't get out of, he doesn't leave during the most chaotic part of it. But you're absolutely right. He is dressed the way he is. But he's not in like the black uniform with the little hat.
It almost seems like they're like outsourced Imperial work, because like they don't quite wear the same uniforms. Like they have like a kind of aesthetic, but he wears brown, like the brown coat.
So he's not an employee with benefits. He's actually a 1099 employee of the Empire, Brody. So he does work for them, but he's not an employee.
He's a
I think you understand what I think you can relate.
You know what?
Brody.
If I'm a Knicks fan and I go to Boston to watch them play the Celtics, I'm going to boo the towel guy for Boston. It doesn't matter to me that he's not on the team. I'm booing the concession guys. I'm booing the scoreboard operator. He's part of the team I don't like.
Well, now's will be a good time to hate Boston.
I wouldn't want you to. I'm glad you didn't go up to Boston, because I saw the way that Celtics fans were handling the losses out in the streets, and being dressed in Knicks colors might not have been the best place to be. So always better to just watch from home in New Jersey, right, Brody?
Absolutely. Well, somebody called our local sports station, WFAN here in New York, a woman, and said that a guy shoved her in the eyes and pushed her glasses into her face and was ready to fight her because she was there rooting for the Knicks. So
you gotta be careful when you do that. As someone who routinely goes to Dodger Stadium in Mets gear, you just have to be aware of your. You have to be. No, I'm just saying. Especially but I'm saying just need to be aware of your surroundings. You know,
I think a Mets jersey in LA is not that offensive, considering that half of LA is from New York and the blue on the Mets is from the Dodgers. I don't think there's a hate. I think
all right.
if you, I think if you showed
Why
up
not?
in a,
Yeah, so you fly out when they're here in a couple of weeks.
I will.
And after the
I
game
will.
ends at 10 p.m., we'll walk through the parking lot together.
Do you really think it's the same kind of hate as New York, Boston, or New York, Philly?
I think there's more tattoos, but we can move on from that.
Okay.
But in any case,
Now we're going to start doing a recap podcast after every game of the
NBA finals. Yeah. We'll start taking calls. First time, long time. I'll take my answer off the air. We'll get all of that. So I know, but the point is, like, yes, obviously they hate the Empire, and we understand that. We have this very vocal crowd, and I think that they do a good job. It's interesting because it's reminiscent of the incident in season 1. Obviously, it ends up being more significant in terms of the Star Wars mythos and sort of the building of, I was going to say the world building, but I guess it's galaxy building, just sort of dealing with all of that, getting to kind of see. And I think that this show does angry mobs very well in terms of what we've seen a few times already.
I think it was like 350 extras were brought in for that. For those
well,
scenes.
I'm glad it was that and not 9 extras that they just repeated CGI.
And AI, right.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. And Ivan, thank you. He knew what I was grasping for. Ferrex is the incident in season 1. Ferrex, Stone and Sky. I love that this was brought back. So obviously, this is a fantasy world, and this is not at all like things happen in the real world. So when a terrible incident happens, you don't immediately have politicians who are towing a line that is different from what the facts say. And,
never happened.
We go to the Imperial Senate, and we have everybody talking about the heroic Imperial officers and the travesty. And nothing about this show ever seems to ring true from the real world.
It's not ripped from the headlines at all.
There's never any echoes. By the way, they made this show 2 years ago, so I can't even imagine what they were thinking. So interestingly, as we sort of focus on the remaining aspect of the story, and we can circle back on anything that you guys want to talk about. I'm happy to do that. But I think that in terms of the rebellion as we know it heading into A New Hope, this Mon Mothma speaking to the Senate is imperative. And it's even realized by the Empire, who's trying to make sure she doesn't get a chance to speak. And the procedural vote, trying to keep anyone from talking about anything of significant. But leave it to old Bail Organa, who is he knows all the rules and regulations of the Imperial Senate.
He's had that one in his back pocket for a while.
He's been waiting for the right day to use it. And as I talked about last week, the fact that they so Ivan Soto was the one who explained that they made this show 2 years ago, and while they were doing that, Jimmy Smits was a lead in a network procedural drama, so he was unavailable for this. So I love that they switched out 90s NYPD detective Jimmy Smits for 90s NYPD detective Benjamin Bratt from Law and Order, and I think they're both great actors, and at least there's some casual physical resemblance. And yes, I'm making the point that at least, racially similar, that they didn't basically cast somebody that looks like one of the three of us to play Bail Organa. They at least kept in mind for what he had looked like previously. And I think that it's important that we're reminded what an important part Bail Organa is in the birth of the rebellion, and how obviously his daughter definitely is a chip off the old adoptive block. What were some of your thoughts, Brody, as Mon Mothma's storyline post Gorman starts to unfold. Again, none of it feeling anything like ripped from the headline stories.
No, the abyss between reality and truth, whatever she said.
This is pretend. This would never happen. Yeah.
Listen, I was very upset that Jimmy Smits bailed, but he did.
I think he was unavailable. He was number 1 on the call sheet for that other show.
I know.
It's in first position.
I was making a bail pun.
My gosh. I'm sorry. Jesus.
That's okay.
That's on me. He bailed.
Yeah.
All right. You know what? I'm going to put myself in timeout.
At least you attempted to bring it up organically,
Oh, right, nicely done. Oh, you just missed another one, Ryan.
No, I heard the whole thing.
Okay.
That's why I came back.
Great.
I was going to stay backstage, but he did bring it up organically. All right. So
I thought Mon Mothma, after being told don't mention it to anyone, she didn't even mention it to Bale. She's like, so you trust them? He's like, I don't even know them. It's like, oh, great. Sure. But she didn't tell him, like, I heard that one of your team is a spy. She followed the order.
Yeah.
What's amazing to me is the Mon Mothma character, who is so important for the rebellion, and then who was so important in episode 6, that you wonder what happened to her in 4, why she wasn't more prominent in 4, because they've given her such a backstory that we waited until Jedi to see her for the first time, really.
She was on tour with her band at that point.
She was filming a procedural with Jimmy Smits,
the Mon Matthews band, which she does Dave Matthews covers, and I'm not going to hit the bell for that because it wasn't even funny in my head, and it was terrible in execution.
I heard she was filming a movie, Godzilla versus Mon Mothra. So
all right. Well, that one.
Okay.
But what are we going to do? How am I going to ignore that? When you're presented with genius, you have to acknowledge genius.
There you go. Bring a bell back out. I like to think again, head canon again, that when they knew that the Death Star was on the way, it's quite possible that they would have evacuated her from Yavin. Maybe they thought, like, we might not make it out of this. Let's get you off planet. Maybe that's why she's not on the base during the end of A New Hope. But again, just trying to fill in the gaps, because obviously the character's not introduced to Return of the Jedi, so we have to kind of fill in with our own thoughts where she was at for 4 and 5.
You're good at this. I don't want to get into
I pride myself on trying to figure out how all this works.
Since Star Wars is basically a religion to a lot of people, when like you say, like, well, why do kids have cancer and planes hit buildings? There's always like a really good, you're allowed to have free will. And there's always an explanation for the things that aren't. You're doing a great job of like, well, here's probably why they took her off the planet. Even though the character didn't exist yet in the canon of Star Wars. I like that you already have. That's quick, Ryan. I like that.
Ryan's in the back pocket of big Star Wars. All right. He's just a shill for the company.
He's an apologist. He's a Disney apologist.
I'm Disney shill. The check is in the mail.
We'll circle back to Mon Mothma in a second. So I did want to address this. Thank you for saying it again, Ivan Soto. Did you hear the weird theory of Clea being Leia? And for people that look, sometimes these names are a little difficult to manage on this show, is all I'm trying to say. And I want to share something that is taking a moment longer than I wanted it to. So that's why. So there is this theory, and this is who Clea is, who is a tremendous character. I mean, in the last batch of episodes with the hidden microphone on the table, I don't know that we even talked about it nearly enough, how tense that was. The idea that this character might secretly be Princess Leia, there's some resemblance. I don't think it's possible, because the senator's daughter, who is known as the Princess of Alderaan, I think is a very high profile figure, and she couldn't be just working in the antique shop without raising notice. I think it's interesting. I just don't think it's remotely possible. Ryan, had you heard this theory before?
Yeah, and I think what it comes down to is Clea is just way too ingrained in the day-to-day, like, to possibly have anything else going on. Like, like you said, she's got her fingers in everything that's going on. She's constantly monitoring where everyone's at. She's kind of the workhorse behind Luthen, and there's just simply no way that someone could be that plugged in and that dedicated to what she's doing, but also be, the senator's daughter. And then to go back to Rebels, we've seen Leia in Rebels as like
that's
a
right.
junior senator she's starting to get involved, and she's kind of helping in the back end of kind of facilitating a few things, but nothing on the level of what Clay is doing. So
Also, Leah's 19 in A New Hope. She'd have to be like 14 years old in Andor.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. The
Yeah,
fact they
and
look alike,
it seems like one strictly based on looks, and that's just where people go. And
and she's age appropriate on Rebels. Those are episodes I saw, and I do remember seeing. I tuned in specifically because I wanted to see Princess Leia on it. I know there was an episode where they had Frank Oz as the voice of Yoda, so I did catch a smattering of Rebels, but apparently none of the episodes that are important in terms of the grand scheme of things. So that's I'm addressing it because it's interesting, but I think unlikely. And so she's 16 years old in Rebels. And by the way, I was talking about this recently, that one of the things people were critical about the Obi-Wan Kenobi series was that the Princess Leia actress was so annoying. And I'm like, have you seen A New Hope? She's incredibly annoying. She's perfect. It's just like believing that Jake Lloyd could grow up and be as much of a dunce as Hayden Christensen. It all makes sense. Anyway, I'm sorry. We've lost the thread, or I've lost the thread a little bit. So I think getting that moment, and we're sort of jumped ahead with the image on the screen, and we have this speech that she delivers in the Senate. And Ryan, we'll talk in a moment. There's a speech she delivers in Rebels, which is not something that we see, but we instead get this speech in the Senate. So what are your thoughts on sort of piecing these two shows together, basically getting sort of different angles of the same instance, her addressing people and really leading the charge for the rebellion, welcome to the rebellion moment, as episode 9 is titled.
Right. I think first it just goes out to Tony Gilroy for having the respect to stay within the confines of an animated show. Like, I think there's plenty of creators that would just been like, I'm not sticking to that. And I think a decent amount of people thought that would probably get retconned, that the speech she's delivering to the Senate would take the place of the speech that she delivers from the Ghost in Rebels. But no, they made it all work. So essentially, they worked in the show to where after the speech gets cut off and Andor gets her off the planet, they decide that, look, it's not going to be a great look for the rebellion if you come sneaking in, to Yavin with this scoundrel. We want you coming in on the flagship with Gold Squadron and all that kind of stuff. So that's why that she gets changed over to ships within Rebels. And then in Rebels, she delivers that second speech from the deck of the Ghost, and that's kind of the rallying cry of the rebellion. So if you think of the speech in the Senate kind of being the plea to reason within the Senate and talking about the Emperor, the call from the crew of the Ghost is more of the call to the rebellion, where she's saying, okay, the Emperor is our enemy. We have to come together. We have to fight. So the way they kind of made them both work, and everything still kind of falls in line timeline wise, and everything works. Again, props to Tony Gilroy for taking his drama with, these extremely adult themes and making it tie into an animated kids show. Like, to me, that's like what makes Star Wars so beautiful, is that you do have the common thing on the internet is to see the two images of like Luthen and then like Nubs from the kids show, and them saying these two people exist in the same universe. And that's one of the cool things about Star Wars. And I love that they made it all work.
My daughter is very pro Nubs, by the way. She still considers the Star Wars. She's 7. She considers the Star Wars movies to be too scary for her to take on, but she does love Nubs on Young Jedi Adventures. And Ivan does point out the clothes Mon Mothma wore in this episode were in Rebels 2. Gilroy for sure respects Star Wars, and I'll agree with that to a point. But I think it's also more of a testament to the amount of weight that Dave Filoni is able to carry over there, and how much these characters like Grand Admiral Thrawn, and they did an entire Ahsoka series. They brought her into the Mandalorian Force, so it's very easy to discount all of these things. I remember a quote from decades ago in terms of Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry said that the TV and movies were Star Trek fact, but all the novels and all the comics, all of that was Star Trek fiction. And I was like, well, then why should I be spending money on it? And I understand decisions to retcon things later, but even the fact that we still got Grand Admiral Thrawn, even though the incidents of the Timothy Zahn Heir to the Empire series don't happen, but at least we still get sort of this great character first in Rebels, and then we also get to see him, we see a live action version of him. So I'm glad that they can navigate it, but. Ivan Soto, you find me the quote. Does Filoni really hate Andor so he can't be given credit? I just want to see. I want to see the quote that he says that, because if he does say it, that's fine. But I think my point is more that he's important enough that he's like, we're not going to discount all these hours of animated content that we created, and let's never forget that the Boba Fett cartoon from the Star Wars Christmas special is actually pretty cool. I think that gets lost in some of the other
redeeming quality from the holiday special.
Yeah. Well, that and B. Arthur's song, let's be honest. So I just wanted, Ryan, I wanted to kind of get your viewpoint on how all this happens. As someone who hasn't seen that episode, I was left a little, but we're going to see her speech, aren't we? And then we're like, no. It's like a comic book crossover, Brody, when it's like, oh, you want to see what happens next? Well, that won't happen in the pages of the Avengers. You're going to have to also buy this month's issue of Thor and this month's issue of Captain America and the West Coast Avengers. And I was like, God damn it, I have to do a crossover. I love the West Coast Avengers.
To be fair, I think the Senate speech was better. So if you're only going to see one of them, I think the Senate speech was better.
All right.
I will say that Gilroy has made some comments in the past couple of days where he said he did his best to honor, keep the canon and the flow with Rebels. But his exact quote was, in regards to the speech, he said, I don't have to stick to this fucking speech in this cartoon. He also said he's done with Star Wars. He's never going to work with Star Wars again. So there are inconsistencies in the two speeches not lining up perfectly. And the same reason with the KS-20, the robot,
yes.
The canon on that was changed because in one of the novels,
it's a comic, I think. Yeah.
In the comic, he was found. So it was he came about differently. And, Gilroy was like, listen, I'm going to do my best, but I got to tell a story. And he did refer to it as a fucking cartoon. So
did he really?
Yeah.
Which I mean, honestly, I'm fine with. Like, I think, as fans, like, just give us the best. If it's going to compromise your work, then I'm perfectly fine if things are a little bit weird. And you can always just say it's open to interpretation. And if you're watching a kid's show, maybe you're ingesting something differently than it all works. We're all adults. It's fine.
That's the exact quote.
I have to stick to this fucking speech, Andor showrunner, on minimizing Star Wars Rebels in season 2.
And he later goes on and says, like, I don't want to be beholden to a cartoon.
Yeah.
Well,
so I was at peace. If they were going to retcon it and have it be that way, I was perfectly fine with that, because I was pretty sure that Gilroy would write a better speech than what they had in the animated series. So I was like, that's fine. If they want to change it, she's going to get the Yavin. It's all going to be fine.
I thought the speech was fine. I thought it was a good speech. She got cut off, but you got to get the Gorman thing in fast. You got to get that they planned it. She said, like, oh, the Palpatine is the Emperor's the problem, but she didn't really get a chance to say, like, they're going to be mining for minerals. That's why they're there. Watch them mining for minerals tomorrow. That proves my point.
I'm not even sure if she would have known that, though. I don't think she would have had that.
I don't think she did. Nobody got word to her. I would have thought
Yeah.
Andor would have gotten it to, message to somebody. But, it was a powerful speech. She gave her credibility. I've been here since I'm a kid. You know me. I'm respected. But I
almost feel like, from a rebellion of what's going to stir people more, being cut off could almost have more than any words. The fact that, like, they cut this. So if you're watching somebody, even on the House of the Senate here, and all of a sudden C-SPAN just gets cut, like, in the middle of what they're saying, you're instantly like, holy crap, what they were saying must have been, like, super important. So I think almost like that almost does more for their cause than if she was allowed to finish the speech.
No, but she didn't yell. She didn't yell like, my mic, you cut me off. They're cutting me off. They're silencing me. She sort of was like,
I was kind of thinking, like, can they not just drop those pods out of the air? Because I was thinking, like, it seemed like such a small moment, but when the little Senate pod leaves and you're like, man, there's really no escape route. Like you're out there, you're just floating in the ether there, delivering this message. What if they can just press a button and that whole thing just falls out of the sky?
Yeah, no, I
That's a good
think
point.
that it is a good point. And I do believe that when anybody, well, not anybody, but let's say the majority of those who serve in the Imperial Senate realize that a man who became chancellor 25 years ago and had emergency powers extended to him because of the onset of the Clone Wars.
Thank you, Jar Jar.
And then, yeah, thank you. Exactly.
Darth
Thanks,
Jar
Jar
Jar.
Jar. That's definitely all Jar Jar. And also, becomes now I'm the emperor of the Galactic Empire. Well, this all sounds a little ominous, but I would think that, again, it's a fantasy show. It's all pretend, but I'm just assuming that most of the senators won't speak out to what all of them know because they're afraid that a tech billionaire is going to finance primaries against them, and then they won't be able to be reelected again. We're only talking about the fantasy of Star Wars.
Yes. No one has to marry anyone's daughter in real life, so that's totally different.
That never happens. So yeah, I think that, Mon Mothma, knowing what needs to be said, but she's aware of the stakes. Bail Organa and Luthen are very specific. It's like, you got to go as soon as this is over. And I think sort of the revelation of the traitor in Bail Organa's midst, I guess, was interesting. I would have preferred that we not be tipped off to it, but then it wouldn't explain why Cassian was there and how, he's actually able to rescue her. And we see that once again, he's arguably the most important figure in the success of the rebellion and overthrow.
I saw it on Twitter right before we started. Someone said he's the Forrest Gump of the Star Wars universe.
I
can't lay claim to it. I don't remember who posted it, but I just saw it.
He did once show Emperor Palpatine that he got shot in the buttocks. So yes, I think there are a lot of common. He at least showed that sore shoulder from the Force healer.
Well,
and
his Star Wars name would probably be like Forrest Gump. Forrest.
G apostrophe MP. It'd be like,
there you go.
Gorest Fump.
Yeah, Gorest Fump. Yeah. And Ivan wants to know, how can an adorable owl alien be part of the Empire? Look, anybody can get a sweet talked by a con man. Again, fantasy show. We're just talking about the pretend world of Star Wars. What did you think, Brody, watching all of this unfold? Like the realization that she has to give the speech. I don't know that she needed to go practice it outside. That didn't seem safe. But, again.
Yeah.
What did you think, Brody?
I think that the Mon Mothma arc this season was a tremendous one, from going to a naive fundraising woman, throwing parties and not realizing, and then having to make the deal with the guy about giving up her daughter for the rebellion. Even at the end, she gave the speech, and then when Andor shoots her driver, she's like horrified. She was horrified when he shot the woman who was about to shoot her. Like, she hadn't come to grips yet that it's real. I think leading up to that, it was, there's a rebellion, there's bad people, we got to overthrow the government. But she saw it firsthand. The fact that Luthen killed her childhood friend Tay, the finance guy, that lent her money, had him killed.
So wait, which one of you is powering up the Death Star near your microphone?
I was gonna say my neighbor's cutting their grass right now.
Right,
perfect timing.
So, I'll just. It seems like it might be done. If I hear it again, I'll just mute you. And if you're trying to talk and you're muted, just flag us down.
I got my little control here too. I can do it right before I talk.
Right.
So
sorry, finish your thought, Brody.
Just that she became Mon Mothma, but she wasn't the leader at the beginning. She was sort of like, like she was running PTA meetings and doing covert stuff, but she never got her hands dirty. She never saw the actual, killing in front of her. And I think by the end of this episode, she realized, I think when she's sitting back and Andor is flying her, when she escapes, I think that's when it dawned on her that, okay, it's real now. People are going to die for the cause. People are going to be killed. And I got to step up. I gave a speech, but I still don't think she realized like that they wanted to kill her until the female guard was going to kill her. And the fact that she saw her driver die, I think that was all like a light bulb for her. Like, crap, this is real. These people are evil and they're dying. And I don't think she realized that when she was throwing parties for dignitaries at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. What do you think about all this, Ryan? Just sort of watching this unfold, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it perfectly. It's one thing to kind of be, again, these are people coming to the realization of what their actions that they've been doing over the past few years are finally culminating in. And that's the name of the episode. And what Andor says to her is, "Welcome to the rebellion. You know, you're in it now."
Yeah.
I love those scenes running around the back halls of the Senate. Whenever you see like logistical elements of how this world works, I always just find interesting. But seeing like the journalist room and the little hallways and the broom closets and all that kind of stuff was just super interesting to me. I also loved Andor's ability to kind of disarm people with like little lines. He didn't just pull his gun out, you know, like when he's talking to the lady in the room, when he says a line to her that just causes that little split second and he gets to shoot her. Or when they're walking up to the car driver and he's like, "Hey, I've got her. We've got you're," and says his name. And it's just enough to disarm him for a split second. So he has the jump, pulls out his gun, shoots him dead. Just all those little moments. I thought the tension was high, and it was all super well done, and a good contrast with the episode prior, which was just all big, grand, 350 people on screen. This episode is mainly 2, kind of, and that's where all the tension lies. I thought it was a nice little contrast.
Yeah, one of the things that we did reference earlier, the actual congregation of the mob, basically on Gorman and chanting. It is as if the French military opened up on the entire stage of Les Miserables and took everyone out and was like, "Okay, no act 2. Everyone's dead. What's for dinner?" So as we look ahead towards episodes 10, 11, and 12, I want to make sure that there's no stone left unturned. I'll ask you first, Brody. Is there anything from these 3 episodes that we haven't touched on that maybe we should have? And I could be missing a major storyline at this point, and that's on me if it's true.
No, I don't think anything's missing. I will say the only thing that's missing for me is that I would have liked to have seen each year be a season like they had originally talked about doing, because you watch the 3 episodes and it's a year and it jumps. You're in the story. You're in like how it ends. You're like, "Oh, what are they going to do tomorrow?" You're like a year later. And it's having to like figure out now when episode 10 starts, what did I miss and what happened? And,
Yeah.
I want all those blanks filled in. I'm so engrossed in the story. I don't want to lose a year of plot. So
I think if we could have gotten 5 seasons of this show that very gradually brings us to Rogue One, that would have been amazing. I just think the economics of that probably just didn't exist, especially.
No, and I think the actors and I agree. But for me, season 1, which flowed, it was 1 year. There was so much more drama, and
I agree.
The prison scene was amazing, and things aren't developing. Long term, they're developing in 2 episodes rather than 4.
Yeah.
And so it's jumping so quickly that it seems like it's getting there faster than I wanted to get there. But I think we touched on all the plot lines. Ryan, if we missed anything, please. I don't remember anything that we missed leading up, and I don't know what's coming next. So
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where there probably is I had so many thoughts, and I've spent the last few days trying to organize them into some way that would work. And I'm sure we're missing something, but I think what just stuck out to me was just how it felt like we were watching important television, which I haven't felt in a long time. I think we were talking off air, Christian, but
yeah,
I can't recall feeling this way watching an actual episode going back to like the peak of Game of Thrones, where you were watching TV and you're like, this is going to last for a while. People are going to be talking about this. And that was just the sense I got, halfway through episode 8, all the way through 9, where it just doesn't stop. And I was like, man, it's been good. The whole show has been good up until this point, but it really felt like you were watching something with these 3 episodes that felt important and like something that people are going to be digesting and dissecting and doing YouTube videos breaking down for a long way to come. And it was just really good television.
Well, nobody watches YouTube videos that break down episodic television, so I don't know that there's really an audience for that. One thing I wanted to touch on was a story that I saw was that there was a planned horror movie episode for K2SO. It was basically.
I think we pretty much got that already anyway. Once those K2 units, once those K2 units hit the ground and started chucking protesters, it got pretty dire at that point.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought. I thought we got enough of it. But they were originally going to have K2SO arrival, an entire episode with a totally unique vibe from the rest of the series. So Dan Gilroy, who I of course assume is Tony's brother, wrote an amazing, entirely self-contained episode. That was episode 209. So it was an amazing episode. It was like a horror movie. It was the K2 story, and they had to bring this huge, ugly tanker ship to Yavin, and there was a KX unit that was trapped inside there hunting. It was sort of like a monster movie with K2 on it. That kind of sounds like Alien, in all honesty. So I'm glad we didn't get that. I think
it's one of those things where like it probably would have been cool, but sometimes maybe being forced into the box that they've been forced into can have a better product in the end. I don't know.
May the force to be with you. Thank you.
You might need a new bell, Christian. Sound a little tired.
It's I gotta tighten it. So this was for the 100th episode of my podcast, which is on episode 640 now. So it might have had its bell rung. It's definitely
you need like the one on Ferrex where you just got the big hammers and you just
I should have, you know what, I need a little hammer for it. I should just and not even try to use it anymore. In any case, we will be doing another episode, our fourth of these Andor season 2 recaps. That'll be episodes 10, 11, and 12. I don't know when we're doing it, so you'll have to follow me on social media at Christian DMZ. Subscribe to the Geekscape YouTube channel, where earlier today we were talking about Thunderbolts, and we've got 3 Thunderbolts specials, so there'll be another one of those. Also not currently scheduled. So that is why you need to subscribe to the Geekscape YouTube channel when you know and when you're able to be alerted when everything is coming. I don't want to lock myself into a day and time where I have to have already finished all 3 of these. If I had to guess, I'm going to be watching them Tuesday night like I did this week. But I want to try and get our entire complement of panelists that have been on throughout this season so that we can all kind of talk about where we ended up. So sometime next week, we'll be back with one more of these. I can't believe that this release schedule actually worked for me. I like the mini binges. I think if they did all 12 episodes, I'd just be a wreck right now. I think I'd be like so deprived, emotionally drained, physically exhausted. So I feel like this is the best way to do it. But hopefully we'll make it work where both of you will be able to be there. But in the meantime, Ryan, other than looking back at the Thunderbolts conversation we had earlier today, where are some places that you can be found?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll actually be recording tonight for the Bulletproof podcast. So we're on all your podcast platforms, on the Geekscape network, and on YouTube now. I think we're reviewing the new sniper movie that just came out on Netflix tonight. So we'll be talking about that. And then also right on the Bulletproof, bulletproofaction.com is where most of I kind of cover all the Star Wars and Marvel stuff there. So you can always find my stuff there. And then you can find me on Twitter at RyCamN7.
All right. Well, great. Glad you were able to be here for this conversation. And David Brody, glad that we were finally able to talk Star Wars. And where can the galaxy's favorite Brooklyn boy be found?
Well, you could find me on the Brooklyn Boys podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. It's nothing but neurotic, pure, angry Brooklyn comedy. And you can find me on almost all social media at David Brody with a Y for your non-visual audience.
And my personal podcast that did Birth the Bell, BLADTCAST. We will leave you with the point that, of course, Ivan wanted us to remember that rebellions are built on hope. And
I was so happy those two got to meet again. Like, I don't know, for whatever reason, I was invested in that interaction between the bellhop and casting. I was glad they got to.
I did
have
like
that
that
moment.
actually. Yeah, I was, and when it was included in the recap on that episode, I'm like, oh, the bellhop. Okay, guess we're gonna see him again. But yes, very much so. So thank you to everybody in the chat, and thank you to Ryan Campbell, David Brody. I'm Christian Bladt, and we will be with you one more time for this. But like I said, subscribe to the Geekscape YouTube channel. You'll get everything, including Internet Supreme Court. That'll be coming up in a little bit more than an hour. You'll see our friend Katie Hampton over there. That's all the time we have for now. And I guess that all we can leave you with is may the force be with you, even though it is now none of the days that fit into the May the 4th, Revenge of the 5th. My son even gave me Revenge of the 6th. I'm like, well, all right. But I mean, if you just did Revenge of the 5th, the next day can't be Revenge of the 6th. So I don't know how it works. But in any case, we'll see you all soon. Bye, everybody.